She's unfit to be part of this family. Mason's voice rang through the courtroom with absolute confidence. He stood there in his $1,000 suit, gesturing at me like I was something he'd scraped off his shoe. Unstable. Manipulative. Completely incapable of providing a proper environment for my nephew. The judge looked at me over her reading glasses. My husband Liam sat 3 rows behind Mason, staring at his hands. Not defending me. Not saying a word. Just like always. Mason continued, his voice dripping with practiced concern. Your Honor, we have testimony from family members about her erratic behavior, her abandonment of maternal duties, her complete disregard for family values. He paused dramatically. She's a gold digger who trapped my brother and is now trying to take everything. The courtroom was full of Fullertons. Liam's mother dabbed her eyes with a silk handkerchief. His father sat stone-faced in solidarity. Friends of the family filled the benches, all watching me with barely concealed contempt. I sat quietly at my table, hands folded, waiting. My attorney squeezed my arm gently. It was almost time. Does the respondent wish to address these allegations? The judge asked. I stood slowly, smoothing my navy dress. Then I spoke one sentence. Your Honor, I'm a certified forensic accountant, and I have evidence that Mason Fullerton has embezzled over $2 million from his charitable foundation. The courtroom went completely silent. My name is Elise Crawford. Not Fullerton. Never really Fullerton, though I'd carried that name for 7 years. I didn't marry into wealth. I married into judgment, scrutiny, and conditional love that came with so many strings attached I could barely move. I grew up in a small town 3 hours outside the city. My father worked at a factory. My mother was a school secretary. We weren't poor, but we weren't Fullerton rich either. Not even close. I met Liam at a coffee shop when I was 23. He was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in my life. He asked about my classes, my dreams, my favorite books. For 6 months, he made me feel like the most important person in the world. Then I met his family. The Fullertons lived in a mansion with actual columns out front. Old money, new investments, and a family name that opened doors across the state. Liam's father owned a commercial real estate empire. His mother sat on charity boards and planned galas. And Mason, Liam's older brother, was the golden child. Successful businessman, philanthropist, future political candidate according to family whispers. I should have known from that first dinner that I would never measure up. But I was young and in love and stupid enough to think love would be enough. It wasn't. My first real glimpse of what they thought of me came at Thanksgiving, 3 months after Liam and I got engaged. The entire family gathered around a table that could seat 20. Crystal glasses. China plates. A chandelier that probably cost more than my parents' house. Halfway through dinner, Mason raised his wine glass and smiled at me. The kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. To Liam, he announced. Who could have done so much better? Laughter rippled around the table. Uncomfortable, knowing laughter. Liam's mother patted Mason's hand affectionately. His father chuckled into his scotch. And Liam? Liam just looked at his plate and said nothing. I waited for him to defend me. To tell his brother that was inappropriate. To say anything that indicated he valued me at all. Silence. Just the sound of silverware against china and my heart breaking quietly inside my chest. Don't mind Mason, Liam's mother said eventually, her tone light and dismissive. He just wants the best for his baby brother. I smiled and nodded like I was in on the joke. Like my feelings didn't matter. Like I wasn't sitting there realizing I'd just agreed to marry into a family that saw me as beneath them. That night, in Liam's childhood bedroom with its vintage posters and swimming trophies, I asked him why he didn't say anything. They were just joking, he said, already half asleep. You're too sensitive, Elise. You need to lighten up. That was the first time he said those words. It wouldn't be the last. The white wine incident happened at Christmas. Liam's mother, Patricia, hosted an elaborate party with 50 guests dressed in designer labels and expensive jewelry. I'd saved for months to buy one nice dress. Cream-colored silk that made me feel, for once, like maybe I belonged. Patricia found me in the kitchen helping to arrange appetizers. She was holding a glass of white wine and wearing a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Oh, Elise, you don't need to help. You're family now." The word family sounded like an insult the way she said it. She moved past me, stumbled slightly, and suddenly my dress was soaked in cold white wine. The silk absorbed it instantly, spreading across my stomach and down my skirt. "Oh my goodness," Patricia gasped, but her eyes were steady. Calculating. How clumsy of me. She didn't apologize. Just dabbed at the stain with a napkin, making it worse, while other guests looked on with barely concealed amusement. "These things happen," she said lightly. "You should probably change." Except I didn't have anything to change into. This was my only nice dress. I excused myself to the bathroom and locked the door. Stared at myself in the mirror with its gold frame and perfect lighting that showed every flaw. I cried into a monogram towel, mascara running, while the party continued downstairs. When I finally emerged 20 minutes later, makeup fixed and dress still stained, no one mentioned it. They just looked through me like I wasn't there. The worst part wasn't the wine incident. It was what came 2 weeks later. Liam's family was taking their annual holiday portrait for their Christmas card. Professional photographer, coordinated outfits in shades of cream and navy, perfect styling. I'd been told it was at 3 o'clock on Saturday. I showed up at 2:50, dressed carefully in the navy sweater Patricia had suggested. The house was empty. I called Liam. No answer. I called Patricia. Straight to voicemail. Confused and worried something had happened, I drove to Patricia's country club where they sometimes had brunch. There they all were. On the lawn with the photographer. Posing. Smiling. The whole family in perfect formation. They'd taken the photos at 1 o'clock. 2 hours earlier than they'd told me. "Oh, Elise." Patricia called when she spotted me standing there like an idiot. "You're here. We're just finishing up. You were running late, weren't you?" I wasn't running late. They'd lied about the time. Deliberately excluded me while maintaining plausible deniability. The Christmas card arrived 3 weeks later. The Fullerton family, in elegant script across the top. 4 faces smiling in coordinated outfits. Liam among them, looking happy and complete. I wasn't in it. I'd been erased before I even officially joined the family. When I asked Liam about it, he shrugged. "Mom said you were running late. It's not a big deal, Elise. Stop making everything about you." I stopped talking about it. But I didn't stop remembering. Mason was worshipped in that family. Everything he touched turned to gold, or so they believed. He'd built a successful investment firm by 30. Started a charitable foundation that hosted elaborate fundraising galas. Dated models and socialites whose names appeared in society pages. Patricia's eyes literally lit up when he entered a room. His father clapped him on the shoulder with genuine pride. And Liam, despite being only 2 years younger, existed perpetually in Mason's shadow. Mason called me sweet in a tone that made my skin crawl. "Sweet Elise," he'd say, patting my shoulder like I was a child. So earnest. So trying. At family dinners, he'd dominate conversations with stories about business deals, charitable work, important people he'd met. Everyone hung on his words. When I tried to contribute, he'd smile indulgently and talk over me. "That's nice, Elise," he'd interrupt. Anyway, as I was saying about the mayor's initiative. Once, I made the mistake of correcting him on a fact about local history. My degree was in business administration, but I'd always loved history and read extensively. Mason's smile froze. "Actually," he said slowly, "I think you're confused. I was there when the Historical Society presented on this." He hadn't been. I'd attended that presentation. But his word was gospel in that family, and mine was nothing. Liam squeezed my hand under the table. A warning, not support. Later, he told me I'd embarrassed him. That I needed to stop trying to compete with Mason. I wasn't competing. I was just existing. But apparently even that was too much. The dinner party from hell happened 6 months into our marriage. Mason brought his new girlfriend, a woman named Vanessa who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Tall, thin, impeccably dressed, with a voice that carried across rooms. She was also cruel. "Oh my God," she said when I mentioned growing up in Millbrook. "That tiny place off the highway. I think we stopped there once for gas. So quaint." The word quaint sounded like trash. "Elise has the most adorable accent," she continued, her voice pitching up mockingly. "Say water again. It's so cute how you pronounce it." Patricia laughed. Actually laughed at someone mocking her daughter-in-law. Mason smiled indulgently at Vanessa like she was being charming instead of cruel. "And Liam?" Liam suddenly became very interested in his wine glass. Pretended not to hear as Vanessa continued to pick apart my background, my clothes, my education from a state school instead of an Ivy League. I excused myself from the table and went to the bathroom. Locked the door. Breathed deeply and reminded myself that I loved Liam. That this was temporary. That eventually, they'd accept me. I was wrong on all counts. When I returned, the conversation had moved on. No one acknowledged what had happened. No one defended me. No one seemed to care that I'd been humiliated in my own home. Later that night, I confronted Liam. "You heard what she said. Why didn't you say anything?" "Say what?" "She was just making conversation. She was mocking me." "You're too sensitive," he said, that familiar refrain. "Vanessa's just direct. You're misunderstanding her tone." "Is this love?" I asked him one night, 3 months later. "What? This? Us? Is this what love is supposed to feel like?" Liam looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "What are you talking about?" "Of course I love you. Then why don't you ever defend me? Why do you let your family treat me like I don't matter?" His face hardened. "Here we go again. You're so dramatic, Elise. My family has been nothing but welcoming. You're the one who can't fit in. They excluded me from the Christmas photo. That was a miscommunication. Your brother insults me constantly. Mason teases everyone. You take everything personally. Your mother spilled wine on me deliberately. That was an accident. You're being paranoid. Gaslighting. That's what my college roommate called it when I finally broke down and told her what was happening. He's gaslighting you, making you question your own reality." But I loved him. And I'd made vows. And I kept thinking that if I just tried harder, was better, more perfect, they'd finally accept me. So I stayed. And I smiled. And I let them chip away at who I was, piece by piece, until I barely recognized myself. That was my biggest mistake. Not marrying Liam. But losing myself in the process of trying to be someone his family could love. Because the truth was, no version of me would ever be good enough. They didn't want me to improve. They wanted me gone. Patricia's 60th birthday party was held at the country club. 200 guests. Live band. Flowers that probably cost more than a car. I wore a dress Patricia had helped me pick out, desperate for her approval. During cocktail hour, I went to the bathroom. As I was washing my hands, I heard voices outside. Patricia's voice. And Mason's. "She tries so hard," Patricia was saying. "It's almost sad." "Liam should have married Clarissa," Mason replied. "She would have understood the family." "At least the relationship won't last," Patricia said. "These things never do. She'll never really belong here. We just have to wait her out." I stood frozen in the bathroom stall, hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. They continued talking for another minute about family business, then left. I stayed in that stall for 10 minutes, trying to compose myself. Trying to rebuild the mask I wore around them. When I emerged, I went back to the party. Smiled through speeches praising Patricia's grace and generosity. Cut cake. Posed for photos. Acted like I hadn't just heard my mother-in-law casually discussing how temporary I was. That night, Liam asked why I was quiet. I told him I had a headache. He was asleep within minutes. I lay awake staring at the ceiling of our bedroom, wondering how long I was supposed to keep pretending. The answer, I eventually realized, was until I had another option. So I started building one. I got pregnant 3 months later. Unplanned but not unwelcome. I'd always wanted children, and some naive part of me thought maybe a baby would change things. Would make me real family instead of tolerated outsider. Liam was excited. His parents were pleased. And Patricia said something that should have been my final warning. Well, she said, one hand on my still flat stomach, at least the baby will have Fullerton genes. She said it like it was a comfort. Like my contribution to my own child was so minimal it barely mattered as long as half the DNA came from the right family. Liam laughed. Actually laughed at his mother's casual dismissal of me as the mother of his child. I didn't laugh. I went home and cried in the shower where no one could hear. But I also started planning. Because I suddenly realized with perfect clarity that if I didn't protect myself and my child, no one would. The Fullertons would take my baby and push me further and further to the margins until I disappeared completely. So I started documenting everything. Every insult. Every exclusion. Every moment of cruelty disguised as family tradition. I opened a separate bank account Liam didn't know about. Started putting away small amounts of money. Emergency fund, I told myself. Just in case. The baby shower happened when I was 7 months pregnant. Patricia insisted on planning it. I gave her a guest list that included my mother, my college friends, and my aunt. The shower was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon at Patricia's house. I showed up on time. The house was empty. I called Patricia. "Oh, sweetie," she said, her voice syrupy with false concern. "Didn't Liam tell you? We had to reschedule." I sent him a message to pass along. Liam hadn't told me anything. And I later discovered the shower hadn't been rescheduled. It had happened. The day before. Without me. Patricia had thrown a baby shower for my child and deliberately excluded me, the mother. My own mother had called me confused, asking where I was. My friends had shown up and been told I'd had a family emergency. They'd celebrated my baby without me, opening gifts, playing games, eating cake. And no one apologized. When I confronted Liam, he claimed his mother had told him I knew. "Must have been a miscommunication," he said, already defensive. "Why do you always assume the worst about my family?" "Because they threw my baby shower without me." "You're being dramatic. They probably thought you needed rest. You've been so tired." The gaslighting was so casual now he didn't even seem to realize he was doing it. Or maybe he did and just didn't care. That's when I found the letter. I was looking for stamps in Liam's desk drawer and found an old envelope tucked in the back. Inside was a letter he'd written to his ex-girlfriend Clarissa. It was dated 2 months after our wedding. "I miss how easy things were with you," he'd written. "How you fit into my family. How you understood our world. I hope you're well and happy. You were always the one who really belonged." I read it 3 times. Then I carefully put it back exactly where I'd found it. That night, I slept in the guest room. The next morning, I made a decision. I was 6 months pregnant, financially dependent, and trapped in a marriage where I was valued less than the furniture. But I had a brain and a partially completed degree I'd abandoned when we got married. So I started using both. I quietly applied to finish my bachelor's degree in business administration. Online classes, scheduled during the day when Liam was at work. He never asked what I did with my time. Assumed I was shopping or lunching or doing whatever he imagined housewives did. I was studying advanced accounting, business law, financial analysis. I had the baby, a beautiful boy we named Spencer. Patricia tried to insist on Spencer Fullerton III, continuing a family tradition. I quietly put Spencer Crawford Fullerton on the birth certificate. My maiden name right there in the middle. Small rebellion, but it mattered to me. While Spencer slept, I studied. While Liam worked late, I attended online lectures. While the family gathered for Sunday dinners where I was mostly ignored, I was mentally reviewing case studies and memorizing accounting principles. I got straight A's. Not because I needed to prove anything to them, but because I was finally doing something for myself. Something they couldn't take away or diminish or mock. 6 months after Spencer was born, I graduated. Liam didn't attend the ceremony. Said he had a work commitment. I went alone, walked across that stage, and felt proud of myself for the first time in years. Then I started job hunting. Quietly. Carefully. Applying only to positions where the Fullerton name wouldn't reach. I landed an internship at a forensic accounting firm. The pay was minimal, but the experience was invaluable. I told Liam I'd joined a mother's group that met twice a week. He never questioned it. Why would he? I was just his wife, doing wife things, filling time between caring for his son and looking decorative at family functions. The firm specialized in financial fraud investigation, corporate embezzlement, tax evasion, money laundering through shell companies. I absorbed everything like I was dying of thirst, and this knowledge was water. My supervisor, a woman named Helen who'd built the firm from nothing, took an interest in me. "You're good at this," she said after I caught a discrepancy in a case everyone else had missed. "Have you considered making this a career?" "I'm just an intern," I replied. "You're a natural. Most people see numbers. You see patterns. That's a gift." She offered me a junior position when my internship ended. Real salary. Benefits. Business cards with my name and the title, financial analyst. I accepted immediately. Liam wasn't pleased when I told him I'd taken a job. "What about Spencer?" "He'll be in daycare 3 days a week and with my mother the other 2. "What about our home?" "I'll still manage everything. This won't affect you at all." "What will people think?" "Fullerton wives don't work." "I'm not a Fullerton wife. I'm a person who happens to be married to a Fullerton." His face darkened. But he didn't forbid it. Probably because he assumed I'd fail or quit within weeks. I did neither. A year into my job, I got promoted to senior analyst. Helen pulled me aside and gave me a new assignment. "There's a charitable foundation we've been asked to review. Routine audit before a major donation. I want you to lead it." She handed me a file. The foundation's name was printed across the top. The Fullerton Foundation. Mason's Foundation. I stared at the name for a long moment. "Is there a problem?" Helen asked. "No," I said carefully. "No problem at all." I took the file home and started reviewing it that night after everyone was asleep. Tax returns. Donation records. Operating expenses. Grant distributions. At first, everything looked perfect. Professionally managed. Squeaky clean. Then I started noticing small things. A grant to a company that didn't seem to exist. Operating expenses that seemed high for a foundation of this size. Payments to consulting firms I couldn't verify. I dug deeper. Cross-referenced company registrations. Traced money through multiple accounts. Stayed up until 3 in the morning following digital breadcrumbs that most people would never notice. What I found made my blood run cold. Shell companies. Fake consulting firms. Charitable donations that went nowhere. Money moving in circles, through multiple accounts, eventually landing in personal accounts tied to Mason. Over $2 million embezzled over 5 years. Tax fraud. Charity fraud. Theft disguised as philanthropy. The golden boy wasn't just tarnished. He was criminal. I sat at my kitchen table with proof spread around me, hands shaking, and made a choice. I didn't confront Mason. Didn't tell Liam. Didn't give any indication I knew anything. Instead, I documented everything meticulously. Every transaction. Every shell company. Every false donation. I created spreadsheets. Printed bank records. Built a case that would hold up in court. It took me 3 months. 3 months of working late, claiming it was a big project I couldn't discuss due to confidentiality agreements. Liam didn't care. He was too busy with his own work and too confident in his family's superiority to imagine I could discover anything that mattered. I kept the evidence at my office in a locked file cabinet. Made copies stored in 3 separate locations. Send encrypted files to my personal email. Backed everything up on drives I kept at my mother's house. This wasn't impulsive. This was strategic. Because I knew that when this came out, the Fullertons would come after me with everything they had. I needed to be ready. Meanwhile, family dinners continued. Mason held court, talking about the foundation's latest fundraiser. Patricia beamed with pride at her successful, charitable son. And I smiled and nodded and said nothing while mentally reviewing the evidence I'd compiled. "You've been quiet lately," Mason said to me one evening. "Everything okay, sweet Elise?" "Everything's fine," I replied. "Just tired from work." "Still doing that little job?" His tone was dismissive, amused. "Yes. Still doing that little job." He had no idea that little job was about to destroy him. The catalyst came 6 months later. Liam started acting suspicious. Coming home late. Being secretive with his phone. Showering immediately when he got home instead of hours later. Classic signs. I didn't confront him immediately. I watched. Waited. Confirmed what I already suspected. He was having an affair. I found the evidence on his laptop one evening when he was in the shower. Emails to a woman named Kimberly. Hotel reservations. Messages about how complicated his marriage was and how he'd made a mistake marrying someone so different from his world. The emails dated back 8 months. While I'd been working and caring for our son and trying to hold our marriage together, he'd been building a relationship with someone else. Someone who, based on her email signature, worked at his father's company and presumably understood his world better than I ever could. I took screenshots. Forwarded them to my personal email. Then I closed the laptop and went to check on Spencer, who was sleeping peacefully in his crib. When Liam came out of the shower, I was in bed reading. "Good day?" I asked pleasantly. "Fine. Busy. You?" "Same." I turned the page of my book and continued reading like my marriage hadn't just confirmed itself as dead. Like I wasn't already planning my next move. The affair wasn't the end of my marriage. It was just the excuse I needed to end it on my terms. 3 days later, Liam accused me of having an affair. Projection at its finest. "Where were you Tuesday night?" he demanded. It was a Thursday evening. Spencer was already in bed. I was reviewing case files at the kitchen table. "Tuesday. I worked late." "I told you that." "Until 9 o'clock?" "Yes. I had a deadline." His face twisted with suspicion and something that looked like triumph. "I don't believe you. You've been distant. Distracted. Working late all the time." "Who is he?" I stared at my husband. The man I'd loved and tried so hard to please. The man who'd never defended me, never valued me, never seen me as anything but a temporary mistake. "There's no one else," I said calmly. "You're lying. You've changed. You're not the woman I married." "You're right," I agreed. "I'm not. I'm better." That was apparently the wrong thing to say. Within 2 days, Patricia was calling my mother expressing concern about my behavior. Liam's father was telling people at the club that I'd become difficult. Mason made sympathetic comments about how stressful new motherhood could be and how some women couldn't handle it. They were building a narrative. Unstable wife. Bad mother. Woman having a breakdown. I recognized the smear campaign because I'd seen them do it to others who didn't comply with family expectations. The difference was, this time they were doing it to someone who had evidence of their crimes. They just didn't know it yet. A week later, Liam delivered an ultimatum. "Quit your job or I'm leaving." I looked at him across our dining room table. "Okay. Okay, what?" "Okay, leave." His face went red. "That's not. You can't. We have a son." "Yes. We do. And he deserves better than this." I didn't quit. Instead, I made dinner like normal. I tucked Spencer into bed and read him stories. I kissed his forehead and told him I loved him more than anything in the world. Then I went to my laptop and emailed my lawyer. I'd consulted with an attorney 3 months earlier. Quietly. Paid the retainer with money from my separate account. Explained the situation, provided evidence of the affair, discussed custody options. Now I sent a simple message, ready to proceed. The divorce papers were served to Liam at his office 2 days later. He came home furious and disbelieving. You can't do this. I can. I am. We'll destroy you. My family will make sure you never see Spencer again. Your family can try. That's when the real war began. They hired the most expensive family law attorney in the state. Filed motions claiming I was mentally unstable. Had Patricia write a detailed letter about my erratic behavior and emotional instability. Got Liam's father to testify I'd been neglecting Spencer by working. They claimed I was an unfit mother. That I'd abandoned my maternal duties for career ambitions. That I'd changed from the sweet, compliant woman Liam had married into someone hard and cold and manipulative. They tried to paint me as a gold digger who trapped Liam with a pregnancy and was now trying to take everything in the divorce. Every insult they'd ever swallowed came out in legal filings. Every cruel thought they'd ever had about me was suddenly evidence of my unworthiness. And Mason testified against me personally. Took the stand and called me manipulative, calculating, and unfit to be family. My attorney remained calm. Let them talk, she said. Let them show exactly who they are. Then we'll show who you are. The courtroom was packed the day of my custody hearing. The Fullertons filled the benches. Friends of the family. Business associates. All there to watch me be put in my place. Mason took the stand first, looking appropriately concerned and reluctant. I've watched my sister-in-law change dramatically over the past year, he testified. She's become obsessed with work, neglectful of her son, hostile toward family. She's not the woman my brother married. And what is your assessment of her fitness as a mother? Their attorney asked. Honestly? I believe she's incapable of providing a stable environment. She's erratic, emotionally unstable, and more concerned with her career than her child. He turned to look at me, his expression one of practiced sympathy. I take no pleasure in saying this. But my nephew deserves better than a mother who values ambition over family. She's unfit to be part of this family, and frankly, unfit to have primary custody. The courtroom murmured agreement. Patricia dabbed her eyes. Liam looked vindicated. And I sat quietly, waiting for my turn. My attorney stood. Mr. Fullerton, you run a charitable foundation, correct? Yes. The Fullerton Foundation. We've raised millions for various causes. And you're quite proud of this work? Of course. Giving back is important to our family. I see. And Mrs. Fullerton works in. She paused, flipping through papers. What field exactly? Some sort of accounting job. Nothing significant. Nothing significant, my attorney repeated. Your Honor, I'd like to call Mrs. Fullerton to the stand. I stood and walked to the witness chair. Took my oath. Sat down and looked directly at the judge. Mrs. Fullerton, what is your job title? My attorney asked. I took a breath. Then I spoke clearly. I'm a certified forensic accountant specializing in financial fraud investigation. The courtroom went silent. Every eye was on me. Mason's confident expression flickered. And in your professional capacity, my attorney continued, have you had occasion to review the financial records of the Fullerton Foundation? Yes. My firm was hired to conduct a routine audit before a major donation. And what did you discover? I looked at Mason. At Patricia. At Liam. At all the people who'd spent years making me feel worthless. I discovered that Mason Fullerton has embezzled over $2 million from the foundation over the past 5 years. Chaos erupted. Patricia gasped. Liam stood up. Mason's face went white then red. The judge banged her gavel repeatedly. Order. Your Honor, my attorney said calmly, we have extensive documentation. Shell companies. False consulting firms. Fake charitable donations. Tax fraud. All meticulously documented over 3 months of investigation. She placed a thick folder on the judge's bench. Bank records. corporate filings, transaction histories. Every piece of evidence I'd collected, organized, verified. "This is ridiculous," Mason shouted. "She's making this up to get revenge." "The evidence speaks for itself," my attorney replied. "And it's already been reported to the appropriate authorities." The judge leaned forward, examining the first few pages. Her expression grew stern. "These are serious allegations. They're lies," Mason insisted. "She's manipulative, vindictive, Mr. Fullerton," the judge cut him off. "I suggest you stop speaking immediately. You'll need an attorney. A criminal defense attorney." The courtroom erupted again. Patricia was sobbing. Liam looked like he might be sick. Mason's own attorney was frantically whispering to him. And I sat calmly in the witness chair, hands folded, watching their world crumble around them. The investigation moved quickly. Federal prosecutors got involved within days. Mason's assets were frozen pending the investigation. The foundation was shut down immediately. Donors demanded answers and refunds. The media, which had always loved the Fullerton family and their philanthropic image, suddenly turned vicious. Headlines screamed across every news outlet. Local philanthropist accused of massive fraud. Charity scam rocks prominent family. Millionaire's secret embezzlement exposed by sister-in-law. Every detail came out publicly. Every shell company. Every fake donation. Every dollar Mason had stolen from people who trusted him to do good. His reputation, so carefully cultivated over decades, was destroyed in days. Patricia couldn't show her face at the country club anymore. Members whispered and pointed. Former friends stopped returning calls. Liam's father faced uncomfortable questions from business partners about what else the family might be hiding. And Liam? Liam tried to call me a dozen times. I didn't answer once. He showed up at my mother's house where Spencer and I were staying temporarily. I answered the door but didn't let him in. You destroyed my family, he said, looking haggard and desperate. No. Your family destroyed themselves. I just documented it. Mason made mistakes, but he's still my brother. Mason is a criminal. And you all enabled him while treating me like garbage for years. This is vindictive. You're doing this to hurt us. I'm doing this to protect our son from learning that fraud and cruelty are acceptable as long as you have money and a good name. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Maybe he was. I never knew you were capable of this. You never knew anything about me, Liam. You never bothered to look. I closed the door in his face. The final custody hearing was almost anticlimactic after everything that had happened. Mason was under federal indictment. Liam's credibility was completely destroyed. Patricia's character testimony was worthless given her son's criminal charges. The judge reviewed everything methodically. The affair Liam had never denied. The documented history of family cruelty toward me. The evidence that I was a stable, employed, capable mother who'd been systematically undermined and gaslit for years. In light of recent revelations about the Fullerton family, the judge said, her voice stern, and Mr. Liam Fullerton's admitted infidelity and demonstrated lack of character judgment, I'm awarding primary custody to Mrs. Fullerton. She looked at Liam sternly over her reading glasses. You'll have supervised visitation every other weekend, pending completion of parenting classes and a psychological evaluation. Child support will be set according to your income, which appears substantial. And Mr. Fullerton? I strongly suggest you think carefully about the example you want to set for your son going forward. Liam slumped in his chair. Patricia wept loudly into her handkerchief. His father sat stone-faced, finally silent. And I felt nothing but profound relief washing over me. I'd won. Not because I'd sought revenge, but because I'd protected myself and my child the only way I could. By being smarter, more thorough, and more prepared than they ever imagined possible. Outside the courtroom, my attorney shook my hand firmly. You did remarkably well. Most people would have crumbled under that kind of sustained attack. Most people didn't spend years being trained to expect it, I replied quietly. She smiled with genuine respect. What's next for you? A new life. A real one this time. 3 weeks later, Mason was formally indicted on 14 counts including fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, and conspiracy. The trial would take months, but the outcome was essentially certain. The evidence was simply too overwhelming, too meticulously documented. I'd made absolutely sure of that. I moved 6 months later. Took Spencer and left the state entirely. New city where the Fullerton name meant nothing. New job at a prestigious firm that valued my skills and reputation. New home that I'd bought with my own money, in my own name, decorated exactly how I wanted. The divorce was finalized a month before we moved. I got everything I'd asked for. Primary custody with Liam's visitation severely limited. Fair child support based on his actual income. And something else that mattered more than any amount of money. I legally changed my name back to Crawford. Spencer's name too, with the judge's full approval given the circumstances surrounding the case. Spencer Crawford. Not Spencer Fullerton. Not tied to a family that had tried to erase his mother and would have taught him that cruelty was acceptable as long as you had wealth and status to hide behind. My mother helped me pack up our belongings. As we were loading boxes into the moving truck, she found my wedding album buried deep in a closet, dusty and forgotten. "What do you want to do with this?" she asked, holding it carefully. I looked at the white leather cover with its embossed gold lettering. Remembered the naive 23-year-old girl who'd thought love would be enough. Who'd believed she could earn acceptance through patience and perfection and becoming smaller. "Throw it away," I said without hesitation. "Are you sure, honey?" "I'm not that person anymore, Mom. I don't want to remember being her." She tossed it in the donation pile without another word, understanding completely. My new home was smaller than the house I'd shared with Liam and his judgments. But it was entirely mine. I painted the walls colors I actually liked. Bought furniture I chose myself. Hung pictures that mattered to me instead of expensive art meant only to impress guests. Spencer's room was bright yellow with glow-in-the-dark stars carefully arranged on the ceiling. He loved it immediately, spinning in circles and laughing. "Is Daddy coming here?" Spencer asked that first night in our new home, his small face serious. "Sometimes," I explained gently, kneeling to his level. "You'll visit him when the court says it's okay, and he'll come see you when he can. But this is our home now. Just you and me, buddy." "I like just you and me," he said simply, and my heart simultaneously broke and healed. Work became fulfilling in ways I'd never experienced before. Helen had given me a glowing recommendation that landed me a senior position at one of the most prestigious forensic accounting firms in the region. They knew about the Fullerton case. It had made significant news in financial and legal circles. But here, it wasn't scandal or gossip. It was proof of exceptional skill, integrity, and courage under pressure. "You could have buried that evidence," my new supervisor told me during my first week. "Kept quiet to protect your marriage or avoid family conflict. The fact that you didn't, that you followed the evidence regardless of personal cost, tells me everything I need to know about your character and professional ethics." I built a strong reputation quickly. The forensic accountant who'd taken down a prominent family's elaborate fraud scheme. Who couldn't be intimidated, bought, or silenced. Who followed evidence wherever it led, no matter how powerful the people involved or how much pressure they applied. Law firms wanted that credibility for their cases. Corporations wanted that integrity for their audits. My client list grew steadily. My salary increased substantially. And for the first time in my entire adult life, I felt genuinely valued for who I actually was instead of constantly judged for who I wasn't. I made real friends. People who knew my whole story and liked me anyway. Who came over for wine and helped me assemble furniture and babysat Spencer when I had to work late unexpectedly. Who never once made me feel less than enough. I started dating eventually. Nothing serious at first. Just gentle reminders that there were genuinely good people in the world who could see and appreciate my worth. Who valued intelligence and strength instead of demanding constant compliance and silence. Spencer thrived in our new life. He was happy, well-adjusted, secure, and loved. Liam had his court-ordered visitation, but it was appropriately limited and supervised. Spencer would grow up knowing both his parents, but he'd grow up primarily in my home, surrounded by my values, learning that self-worth wasn't negotiable and that integrity mattered more than status. One evening, about a year after we'd moved and started over, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Elise. It's Patricia. I hadn't heard her voice in months. Hadn't wanted to. What do you want, Patricia? She paused, seeming to struggle. I wanted to see how Spencer is doing. Spencer is fine. Thriving, actually. Another long pause. Mason's trial starts next month. I know. I'd been following it professionally, as the evidence I provided remained the backbone of the prosecution's entire case. They're saying he could get 15 years minimum. That sounds appropriate for what he did. He's my son, Elise. Her voice cracked with emotion. I know you must hate us, but he's still my son. I don't hate you, Patricia, I said, realizing with some surprise it was completely true. I just don't care about you anymore. There's a significant difference. We never meant. We didn't realize. You meant every single bit of it, I interrupted firmly. Every insult, every deliberate exclusion, every carefully calculated moment of cruelty. You knew exactly what you were doing to me. You just never thought I'd be strong enough to matter or smart enough to fight back effectively. I'm sorry. The words sounded hollow, performative, too late and too empty. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. Sorry your son is facing serious consequences. Sorry your family's reputation is permanently destroyed. But you're not actually sorry for how you treated me for years. What do you want me to say? Nothing. I don't want anything from you, Patricia. Not apologies. Not explanations. Not excuses. And definitely not contact with my son. I want you to leave us alone completely and let us build a life that has absolutely nothing to do with the Fullerton family. You can't keep Spencer from his family forever. I'm not keeping him from family. I'm protecting him from people who taught him his mother didn't matter. Who would have taught him that cruelty is acceptable if you're wealthy enough? There's a crucial difference. I ended the call before she could respond. Blocked the number immediately. Then I went to check on Spencer, who was building an elaborate tower with blocks in the living room, completely unaware of the conversation and blissfully happy. Mama, look how tall, he called out proudly, gesturing at his creation. That's amazing, sweetheart. I sat down next to him on the floor, and we built together until the tower was taller than he was. Then we knocked it down with great ceremony and started building again. Building something new. Something better. Something strong. Something that was completely ours. That's what I'd finally learned through all of this pain and growth. You can't change people who fundamentally don't want to change. You can't earn love from people who've already decided you're not worth it. But you can protect yourself and your child. You can document everything carefully. You can build your own worth independent of their opinions. You can walk away from toxicity and deliberate cruelty and create something infinitely better. I wasn't a Fullerton. I never really was, despite years of trying. And now, finally, I was completely okay with that reality. Better than okay, actually. I was myself again. Stronger, wiser, more confident, and absolutely unwilling to accept less than I deserved ever again. The Fullertons had thought they'd broken me down, made me disappear. Instead, they'd accidentally forged me into someone completely unbreakable. Someone who knew her worth. Someone who'd quietly documented every slight, built an airtight case with patience and precision, and brought down their golden boy with the same professional skills they'd dismissed as insignificant. Mason would spend many years in federal prison. Liam would spend years regretting his choices and complicity. Patricia would spend years watching her carefully constructed family legacy crumble into dust. And me? I'd spend years building a genuine life filled with real love, earned respect, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd won on my own terms. Not through matching their cruelty. Not through revenge for its own sake. But through competence, integrity, documentation, and refusing to stay silent when it mattered most. Spencer knocked over our block tower with delighted laughter. Again, Mama. Let's build it even taller. I smiled and started rebuilding with him, thinking about foundations and structures and starting over. That's what we did now, every single day. We built our lives carefully and strong. And we built them to last.